All right, first introductions. I get started. My name is RJ. One of the co-founders of Klippa. We started this company about 9.5 years ago. So I've been around from the very start. I've always been in commercial roles, and today I've got about 10 slides prepared that I want to present to you. And together with me is Stan.
Yep. Thanks, RJ. I'm Stan. Been with Klippa 3.5 years now. Glorified demo guy within Klippa. I'll have the pleasure of demonstrating a few things for you today regarding fraud detection. So excited to get started.
Amazing. I see partners, I see clients, I see potential clients. It's great to have this wide audience. So very curious to see what you think of this webinar by the end. But today we're going to speak about fraud. Very exciting topic, I think very relevant. So I want to get started with some things that I read in the news over the last months. So one thing I even read today is from Allianz that over the last year, about 80% of all the Dutch companies have witnessed an attempt of fraud, which is quite broad, but it means that it's all over the place, and the negative effect of that is businesses are losing money. On the other side, you see messages where individuals are gaining access to money or to services that they shouldn't be, like people are conducting VAT fraud or other types of document fraud. The third thing I saw was a thing that happens to our central government in the Netherlands, where people are working somewhere where they shouldn't be working when they forge diplomas and resumes, which can lead to a declined trust in public services. And besides all these business effects, there's also, of course, a personal effect from fraud, where people that have witnessed identity fraud can suffer severe anxiety or even financial pains as well. The last quote is from Victim Support Netherlands. So there's a lot of reasons why we should want to battle fraud. And besides this news, I also, over the last weeks and months, saw the whole social media bombarded with samples. I think all of you that are active on LinkedIn saw people that showed pictures of forged receipts or other types of forgery. And I picked one sample from my co-host Stanley, where he also asked the audience, is this fake or real? And the main message I want to say there is like, hey, is it getting harder and harder to draw the line between what's fake and what's real? So besides these things that we see, I want to have a look at what the analysts say or what the market says. And this is specifically for insurers. So on the left-hand side, we see that fraud is increasing. So the business research company has said that from this year on, the attempts of fraud will increase by 25% year on year. I think that's very conservative, but that's a number that they've come up with. And besides this, a number of attempts, it's also growing in volume, monetary volume. So just in the UK, the insurers have identified 1.1 billion GBP in fraud in 2022 alone. And that's only the portion that they have identified. And I think there's a similar portion that's undetected, which is again is quite conservative because they don't know what they don't know. So it's billions of dollars, euros, GBPs off to criminals, which we should want to avoid. And Gartner is, of course, an authority in terms of enterprise research, and they say that fighting disinformation is one of the top 5 priorities for executives. So even more reason to combat fraudulent attempts. Well, where does this sudden increase come from? I think the main thing that we can all think of is generative AI. Maybe back in the day, you had to be quite an expert to forge an image. So by means of Photoshop or anything else. And nowadays, it's as easy as you open ChatGPT, you ask him to generate an image, and a few seconds later, you have a perfectly fake image that you can use for example, in this case, insurance fraud. So it's so much easier to generate or to create falsified documents. That's one reason. And like I said, the line between what's real and what's fake is definitely blurring. Show one example here of one of our partners. We're working with Nivea for the last 4 years, and there we help them to manage and pay out cashback attempts. In the first year of collaboration, we saw some obvious fake attempts, like the left-hand side, people that are putting handwriting on top of their receipts to get money back from buying Nivea products, which were obviously not Nivea. Then the year later, we still saw some fraudulent attempts. For example, the second one has a photoshopped date. Well, then last year we saw the first signs of image generation, which has still a lot of defects like misspellings or other things you can spot in this one. But this year it's getting definitely more and more sophisticated, where it's super hard to distinguish what is fake and what's real. And that's causing severe problems to the back office of Nivea, where they did their handling manually up until now. So there was a human person checking all the attempts that are coming in and had a potential case of fraud were checked by a human. But it's going to be impossible, because nowadays it's 10 times easier to put an attempt of fraud, and it's 10 times harder to spot it because they are so much more sophisticated. So the back office is flooding, and need to have means or access to more sophisticated means of detecting it as well. So cashback is one example, but we've seen it in many different industries. So cashback is where you're making a photo of a receipt or an image, and you're getting cash back or money back on something that you purchased. But we also help clients doing KYC and KYB, know your customer, know your business, where they have to put some sort of identification. And people want to get access to things that they shouldn't get access to. So that's why they sometimes falsify their identification documents or business registration documents. I think an obvious case that we will come across also in this demo, we'll show a couple of times, is insurance claims. So it can be images of situations like cars or houses, but it can also be an image or a receipt that you have to send over as proof. And there we see a lot of fake attempts or fraudulent attempts. That's where we help our partners with. And the last one is in payments. Can be in accounts payable, where people are sending fake invoices or changing IBAN numbers to get money paid that doesn't belong to them. So how do we got here? So we've been treating fraudulent cases for a very long time. I just said in the start, we started Klippa about 9.5 years ago, 2015. Our first product was digital receipts. From there on, we moved on to receipt scanning by mobile phone. And our first commercial product was called Spend Control. Still alive is where we manage business expenses. And even there, already back in 2018, we saw people that were trying to get money reimbursed that didn't belong to them. So they would falsify a receipt, or maybe try to expense something twice, or something that was from a colleague. So there we had the first signs where we want to combat fraud. From there, we moved on to accounts payable automation. So like I said, invoices that are being falsified by putting a wrong IBAN number or even to a fake company. There we advanced also in modifying or checking modified PDFs. About 5 years ago, we started doing KYC checks, so identity verification checks for onboardings of shared mobility or banks. And there we made use of further advanced fraud detection mechanisms like hologram detections or checksums. One thing it already showed with Nivea is loyalty and cashback. We handle high volumes of receipts and invoices where millions of documents are checked every day, whether they are fraudulent or not. And for the last couple of years, we more and more move towards financial services, insurance claim, banking, where there's also a lot of attempts for stealing money. So this is the portfolio that we've built up. And I think now we're at a stage where our solution for detecting fraud can be used for any document in any use case. And that's what we also want to showcase today. So in this portfolio, I separated in 4 main categories. So like I said, loyalty marketing is what handles cashbacks. We help FMCGs or agencies checking big volumes of receipts and invoices. The second layer is banks, payment service providers, marketplaces, where they have to onboard clients and businesses and want to check if these businesses and people are legit. The third is financial services, has a close link with it, so bank insurers. The same thing, that's what we see a lot of fraudulent attempts. This is an obvious case. And the last one is accounts payable. That's where we're really strong at. This is either the platforms or the enterprise themselves, where we help them with end-to-end automation, but also there we want to prevent them from paying out money to somebody that they shouldn't be. So in all across these industries and use cases, we see fraudulent attempts, and we have built solutions that can help combat it. Well, how do we do it? It's not one solution. We have a big net, a safety net of different solutions that I'm going to walk you through. It's a combination of 10, and we think by applying all these different technologies, you have the highest chance of spotting somebody that want to do harm. The first one is metadata. So every image, every PDF is not just a set of pixels, it also has data behind it. For example, when it's been created, by whom, what's the resolution. And by looking at this metadata from an image or PDF, you can derive a lot of information and also check patterns and see if there's an inconsistency. The second and third are together, called copy, move, and splicing. Copy move is when you, within the image or PDF, copy one part and put it somewhere else. And splicing is copying it from a different image into another image. And this is where we apply, we call it fingerprint or image forensics, where we look at pixel density and how things are going from black to white or changing colors in terms of gradient. And if there's something off there, we can detect it, and that can be a sign of potential fraudulent attempt. The fourth one is a duplicate, so we can check if the entire document is the same or whether the content from the document has been seen before. And this can, for example, be useful when it comes to accounts payable or expense management. The fifth one is very relevant nowadays. So when images are generated by generative AI, they leave certain traces, and we can trace it either from metadata or from the image itself. We're going to also show that later on a bit. Then from the bottom row, the first three are very applicable to accounts payable, so invoices and matching it to purchase orders. So we can cross-check information with third-party sources, think Chamber of Commerce, VAT databases, or even address databases, where the companies are actually registered, still in business and not bankrupt. Two-way matching to check whether business actually ordered something or whether there's an invoice for something that has never been ordered. And calculations are simple math to check if the things that are being purchased on a line level match with the total amounts that's being charged. Then identity verification, I already came across it shortly, where we check passports, driver's licenses, and we can not only check the visual information, but we can also read the NFC chip. And the last thing is more generic on PDF. A PDF consists of layers, and there we can check if these layers are modified. So again, there's a safety net. There's not one thing that fixes it, but it's a combination of technologies that will keep expanding, and altogether they give a good sign of potential fraud. And all these components, they're part of our bigger platform, which is called Doc Horizon. And here's where I'll also hand it over to Stan.
Yep. Thanks, RJ. Yeah, pleasure. Welcome again, everyone. A lot of partners, existing clients here, but also for the people who may not be so familiar with Klippa yet and exactly what it is that we do. I think this is a nice flowchart to demonstrate exactly how we handle projects, how we process documents, and where the fraud detection component comes into play. Like you saw in RJ's graphic just now as well, nice little chart there. I joined about 3.5 years ago, halfway, about the same time we actually started thinking about fraud detection as well. So at the risk of sounding a bit braggy, I think I'm an excellent person to kind of walk you through all the features and how it evolved and how we'll share those features with you today as well. I won't stay here too long, but just for context as well, you see a bunch of features here in the middle of the screen, of course. You see fraud detection there as well. That's the jewel of this webinar. Implementing can be flexible. We are a SaaS company, so everything API-based is, of course, possible. People with less infrastructure in IT, they can do email uploads, web forms. There can be mobile applications where you can send documents to us or directly from the database. And output, similar story. So what you see here is essentially all of our product portfolio in the middle, and the head end of that section and the tail end of that section are completely customizable to how you want to have it. Then I'll quickly take over the screen here and jump to my demo interface. Now, again, just from some extra context here as well, we have an entire platform that includes all the services. This is just a sandbox environment, just a visual GUI, so I can just quickly demonstrate by drag and dropping some documents. This all happens via API in the end, but for this webinar, I'm gonna have a simple demo interface just to show you some documents. First one's up, metadata. That's of course what it's all about. This is also the beginning of our story as well. And I actually have some documents that we started this whole story with back in the day. I'll take some documents here, upload them, click extract. So this is now simulating the API call that we make on the back end. And in first instance, well, we can start very simple. We know from practice and from stories from clients that the majority of the fraudsters out there, they are of the simple variety. They just want to attempt it, see what happens, see if they can get their loyalty points, their cashback points, or get their claim through. So In the basis, what we always do is a metadata check. You can see here, for example, we can find discrepancies between a generation date and a modified date, which you can see here. This is just a visual representation, what's in the API. I'll show you the JSON in a second as well at the very end. And another type of metadata we can look for is a simple editor check. Photoshop, those kind of tools you would suspect are not being used with good intent. Those are the kind of tools we can spot using these kind of metadata checks. And this is very broadly applicable across use cases, across industries, because we're not looking for specific document types and specific fraud. We're just doing a metadata check to return a value, so a risk score, which is our deliverable and what the whole purpose of the fraud detection component is. And using that, you can think of a variety of use cases, any kind of documents, which I'll show you in a second as well. And this is where our story started. And from there, we started to add more layers to make it more foolproof, add more safety nets. And that's how the ball got rolling. I'll quickly move to the next one as well. Image forensics. Now we actually go into the space of, okay, we can tell you there's fraud as a, well, let's say flagging system. So all Klippa says is, we suspect there's fraud. Here it is, information, and you can check those documents and do your background checks. What I hear often is people have paper checklist sheets. They go through 7 steps, checking data on the document, doing their own checks. But what we, of course, want to do is provide a more full solution to also help those people identify where to look for, what to look for. And then we move into the area of image forensics. So again here, a few documents I'll upload again in the same manner. And this time, instead of only metadata, which we did before with the date checks and the editor checks, we now also have additional visual components. And these are a few. I'll elaborate what those are here. So we have copy move. I'll move to this one. It's essentially pixel analysis. Depending on the industry that you're in, it may be coined differently, the phrase. Pixel density analysis, pixel analysis, we call it copy move within Klippa. And if I zoom in here, you can actually quickly see what is meant with pixel analysis. You can already see we're starting to give a few pointers on where to look for. So now we actually also return coordinates on a document and return these indicators to show a user what area of the document has been tampered with. And if we zoom in here, you can kind of see what that technology is based on. So even if it's the same number, so we have a 1 and a 1, they will still be different from each other on a pixel level. And this is talking about images for now. If we have 2 9s, same story, 2 4s, they will always have slight differences on a pixel level. But when we see an exact copy of the pixel density, as you can see here, so this person has copied a few 1s to add the total amount to maybe pass a loyalty check to get some loyalty points, for example. And you'll quickly see that, well, it's an exact copy, looks suspicious. The density of the pixels on the image also changes. And therefore, we provide values, risk scores, which you can see here, and return that as an output via API or in a demo interface, which I'll show you later. And this is used again as a flagging mechanism. But now on top of that, we also provide you additional details. That's copy move. When we talk about splicing, it's when you see here, you can kind of guess what it's about. You often have these cases where people take foreign elements from a different document and just splice it over a different document. So this can be a sudden change in font types, a sudden change in contrast, as you can see here, from black and white. And these kind of elements are what we call splicing. And those two are what we classify as image forensics and what we return as output in the JSON. Now, I've only used, invoices and receipts for now. But just to highlight also the point that RJ mentioned already as well, the document type doesn't really matter for us. We have this built in all of the models for data capture that we currently have within Klippa. So when we talk about identity documents, for example, making a switch to like KYC, KYB cases where you want to onboard clients, you ask for passports, driver's licenses, ID cards. Same story. We have some basic validations that we always do, for example. Is the person over 18? This is a very common case in online gambling in cases where you basically have to do an age check. We can do a quick validity check. Is the date of birth on the document matching 18 plus? And also a simple check if the document is expired or not. So at the moment of upload, you can already involve manual teams, start the unhappy flows, and reduce those turnover times. When we come back to fraud, same thing. We provide the exact same output for every document type. So we do metadata checks, image forensics, and all the others I'll get to in a second as well. So regardless of the document type or the industry that you're in, this is going to be a document agnostic module, which you can use for any kind of document that you can think of. Go back to this one. Now, we want to continue, of course, with the benefit of the user. We want to give more directions, more support, clear images of where documents has been tampered with. Then we move into the document overlay, as you call it. And now we go into the area of PDFs. I've been doing mostly images so far, but of course, a big part of document flows also is PDFs. So that's what we'll do here. Now, I don't need to say much about this part, I think. This speaks for itself. We have in complex PDF editing tools and even simple PDF editing tools, this feature where you can just create a sort of bounding box, a box, you overlay it on a different field on the document, and you can create new text above the old text, and they just submit that document to be processed. So what we want to do, take it one step further. Next to image forensics with the coordinates, we also just want to show you where on a PDF we detect certain modifications. So if you go to this one, for example, it will take us to the corresponding field. We see the new text that's in the overlay box, so the tampered information. And we also see the original information that was in the original PDF. And this one, we've, of course, removed some original text because these are sensitive details belonging to an actual person. But you can see here, if you go to a certain field, we have the text that we've captured and the text that was also on the original PDF. Now, this really allows us to not just do everything by API. We can allow a more user-friendly interface where you can actually get guidance on where to look for what has been tampered with and even look at the original data. So you can do some customer service there, contact people that their information has been used in an evil way. And this is the overlay feature, which I'll get back to in a second, because we also have a way to actually show this to a user instead of just doing it via API. Think of use cases with PDFs being transmitted a lot, and this will be super applicable there to catch those kind of fraud as well. Now, we go into the interesting part of today's evolution of fraud, I suppose, the newest addition to the fraud capability family. I'll load a few documents here. Now, as you can guess, these are generated by myself or by colleagues of ours. I just asked them to generate an image, see what you get, and send it to me. We'll see if we can spot it. So nowadays, people have a lot more access to simple tools that allow them to very quickly documents such as these invoices, receipts, and of course, you want to know is this an AI-generated document, yes or no? So this is the latest addition to the fraud module. We can now detect, based on the metadata again, whether or not a document has been generated by OpenAI or other tools. So what you see here, for example, we give again a risk score. So this is going to be a combined risk score with all the other elements. And we will tell you we find OpenAI being used with this specific model. And this can be used again as a flagging system to generate all kinds of unhappy flows and catch them early on before you incur any time loss or actual costs there as well. I include this one just because this was my inspiration for one of my posts to promote this webinar. I think Edwin is in the audience as well, so this one's for you. So yes, we do see these kinds of images as well in financial services, car financing, leasing services, and it is getting harder and harder to spot these kind of documents. But of course, nowadays, we will have the tools available to spot these kind of documents as well, which will open a lot of new avenues to include additional services on the front end and also the back end. We will definitely put some focus on this as well. OpenAI is becoming increasingly prevalent in everyday life, so it will become more normal to use it, which means the fraudsters, unfortunately, will also make more use of it. But we also have it in our planning, in our vision as a company to provide more tools to combat these scenarios as well. Now, of course, these are all separate layers, and these are all individual from each other. But eventually, what you want to work to, of course, is that regardless of the document type or what is going through, we can basically provide the full safety net. So we look for everything. If we find suspected fraud, we also return everything to you. And then with feedback or with some strategic decisions on your side, you can decide what to do with the information. So rather than just having one element in there, we will now have the full layer, all the things I just discussed in the payload. So when we find it, we send it back to you. When we don't find it, it's just a simple pass check. And what it will look like eventually for the techies among us is just an added element in the JSON payload where we give you the individual scores for specific types of fraud that you're looking for, but also, of course, the overall summary, which you can use on your side to flag these kind of documents. We can give our suggestions here as well. You could say anything over 0 is already suspected fraud. Anything over 0.5, this is a bit up to our clients depending on the sector. But we will do basically this part. And from there, we can also do some additional services, such as human in the loop. So once we have the information, this is, of course, still all within the API. Now, many people that we speak to, they also have back office teams like BPO services, or they have their own in-house teams to actually inspect the documents. They don't want to do anything with APIs. They just want to have an interface, for example, where they can basically see these documents, have a bit of a guiding hand to spot those fraudulent parts better so they can do their work. So one of the things that we have within Klippa at the platform solution is a human in loop, which looks like this. For context, it's just a way to see the image on one hand, and then in this case, also check the suspected fraud components as well. You can go through the documents, you can check the output from Klippa, and eventually, and I'll hand it back to Robert-Jan back in a second, we will also be able to generate reports based on this. We will be able to do much more than just generating a JSON, but we will also generate reports and more things to make it user-friendly and become more and more of a standalone solution as the solution evolves. Great. Hopefully these managed to inspire. This is, of course, just the condensed version, but hope John can show some highlights on what we're working towards and also how we can proceed from here.
Great. Thanks, Stan.
Yep.
I'll take over sharing again. Okay. This is where we ended my part of the presentation. Again, just the invitation, if you have questions, to drop them in the chat or in the Q&A in Zoom. So we'll handle them by the end. So again, part of the platform, human in loop is optional. Well, happy to talk how your flow will look like. But we just showed you a bunch of documents, but documents itself is not the entire story. So the document itself may be legit, but there's of course a whole factor that we can show, and that's also relevant in determining whether something is legit or not, which is a bigger theme called context. So we've seen with one of our insurance partners that after, imagine a big storm somewhere and houses having damaged houses or damaged fences, they might send in these kind of images to prove that there is damage to their house, and then the insurer has to determine whether it's a legit request or not. And then just by the image itself, you might not be able to tell if it's fake or not. And even if it's a real picture like this one, it still doesn't say anything about the legitimacy of this insurance claim. So relevant factors in this case would also be the date and time of where the picture is taken, but also where the storm took place, in combination with the location. So having all the factors combined of where is the picture taken, where does the claimer live, where is the picture taken, and geodata of the device, all that together can paint a full picture and create a decision. And context around this would mean, what is the behavior of this user? How do you typically file a claim? what kind of transactions have been done on their when it comes to, for example, expense management, device data like geo data or resolutions of the camera, identification data. So when somebody has identified themselves, it also gives them more information about who's making the claim. And to check it with historical claims can also draw the full picture. So all these contextual information should be brought together in one place where humans can, or agents, AI can make a final decision. So what we'll see happening in the past, so we've now seen documents, and I think the main message, what we've seen happening is that it's so much easier to generate. So back offices are flooded with attempts. So from fraudsters, we'll see way more attempts. Like it's super easy. So we see tenfolds of fraudulent attempts, and we see an evolution of techniques. So it will be even harder and harder to spot them. So what is the government doing, the regulators? The only thing that they can do is add more compliance requirements. So more and more industries and products will be subject to checks. It can be a full-on KYC check, can be transaction monitoring, or can be that you need to check a certain list if people are allowed to sign up or use your product or service or not. And what that means for businesses is that they have to do a lot more identification. So you'll see KYC requirements to more and more products, and they have to add more automation at some point, because just by checking manually whether something is legit or not is not enough anymore. So this is a lot of change is required from businesses, and we are there to help them. So what they can expect from Klippa is 2 layers. So the first layer is exactly what Stanley just shown. So it's an API service where any document can be sent to. And then in the second layer, you'll get a response whether we think one of those 10 flagging systems has gone off. And we can have an SDK present for you where you can do a KYC check, for example, with the help of NFC that you saw in the previous picture, where we help products do a simple user identification check. That's the first layer, and then there should always be a second layer where somebody determines whether something's actual fraud. So we are just flagging things that we think are off. For example, if the creation date and the modification date are different, that could be an indication of fraud. Doesn't mean that it is. So the second layer will always be a check, which can be performed by a human or an agent. So we are offering this thing called human in the loop that also Stanley showed, where you can do a visual check, which can be performed by our internal fraud desk or can be fully outsourced to Klippa. We have a whole expert team that does these checks for businesses. Besides that, we're also advancing in the way how we do fraud detection. So you've just seen a couple of techniques, but we'll add more emphasis on X-ray of PDF. So it's more sophisticated layer checking. So you see an image on the right-hand side where we can visually show people where PDF might be modified. We want to bring more contextual sources inside, like I just presented, things like geodata, location, behavior data, that it all can be taken into account when taking a decision. Third-party integrations with other companies or the other software products where this context can be derived from. And lastly, we offer PDF reports, which can be used for audit trails. They will look similar to this. So when somebody has taken a decision to not allow somebody access or not pay somebody its invoice, you also have a proof of point why that decision was taken. That can be taken as a proof of point for potential fraud. That was a big part of the demonstration, and then I would like to invite Nick to join the stage, because I think we have received quite a few questions they would like to answer live. So feel free to ask them now. They will also be part of a follow-up deck that we'll share. So you'll receive a recording of this together with the most frequently asked questions and access to how to try this out yourself. But Nick, has there been interesting questions you wanna take upon?
Yeah, thanks a lot for bringing this up, RJ. Exactly. I think we can maybe go from sort of top to bottom. There's like quite some interesting ones, which also got some upvotes. So I'll probably start with those first. See also like some hands being risen. So if you can, leave the questions in the Q&A. We still have about a good amount of like 20 minutes to go through the questions. Just add them in the Q&A box, which you could find at the bottom of the the screen next to the share button. Let me quickly see. So I see there's a question from Philip Lauterbach. Are there options to store output findings and build a comprehensive catalog of attempting fraud schemes, methods for export for further training? So I think this goes already hand in hand with what Stanley showed in the last part of the human in the loop, where we can build these reports. So building the reports which state what our models have detected, which can then be, of course, exported or stored in a data set on your side for further analysis, which you can also then utilize hand in hand with the clients, with our partners, to further develop our solution. Because I think that's one of the key aspects with our fraud solution. It's never stands still. It's ever evolving, because yeah, it feels like by the time you have one solution, there's already two ways around it again. So that's always the most important part, is that we keep evolving with our clients and with the insights they have from the market. Hope this answers your question as well. Just coming up more questions. I'll just go by the ones that have like the highest upvotes. Just check here. Doesn't this only from Frank, sorry, doesn't this only work for real PDF checking? What if I modify a PDF and print it to PDF? I can't see the original data anymore, right? Yeah, that's a good point indeed. So that's why, and that's very reasonable, right? So fraudsters, experienced fraudsters will do this. They know that there's probably like some underlying analysis being done on the documents. And that's also why we think there is no one solution, one feature that can spot every type of fraud, but it's a layer, like a layer of different approaches which help to reduce that risk of documents slipping through the cracks. So in one instance, we can of course use the PDF checks, but on the other instance, we can also use the copy move analysis. So all of these components build and assist each other. Where one fails, the other one might succeed. So that's also why we I think that also answers another question here, for example, on the metadata analysis from Carol. Does different dates or creation modification necessarily mean fraud? No, indeed. So that's also an important aspect, right? All of these analysis tools that we provide are indications. They aren't guarantees for fraud. And I think it's about getting the overall understanding and understanding of what has happened holistically on this document. Whether if it's just the date modification, like you said, doesn't necessarily mean it's fraud. However, if then it turns out that it's been opened in Photoshop as well, and if the line items maybe don't add up anymore, that's something that we can then basically highlight, and it gives you more assurance that this document might have been tampered. And that's basically where we're getting at, is providing you with more insights about what could have happened in this document. Then just scrolling through this, they keep coming in. Then we have from Lee, there's like the first question, copy paste is very impressive. What happens if an image is saved as a compressed PDF? Does the pixel level not get changed? Yeah, exactly. I think it's the same, goes hand in hand with the previous question. So again, if you want to circumvent these analysis tools, there is ways to do it. And there is no like bulletproof vest in that respect. What we want to provide is, again, different methods to spot that kind of fraud in a different way. So then if, for example, we don't get the pixel level analysis, maybe we can get it through the metadata analysis, or we can change, or we can look at the PDF layers. So there's different approaches to how we can minimize that risk. Going through further.
Maybe just to add to that on as well. I think we don't have to be shy about the fact that there are ways to circumvent these kind of checks. Of course, people are getting smarter, but I think our focus is really to capture the majority of them. So the fraudsters who are caught by the nets, and there will always be those cases where you cannot detect them, of course. But then again, this is a living thing. What we have today won't be the same as what we have tomorrow or a year from now. But I definitely don't think we have to be shy about the fact that, yes, there will be cases where I think everybody struggles a bit. But yeah, that's something we will build on over time.
Yep, thanks for adding. Exactly. And it's ever evolving indeed. So if you have specific use cases, that's gold to us as well, because at the end of the day, our partners, our clients are the ones facing this fraud and these attempts on a daily basis, and they have the insights of what's happening as well on the market. And that's how we evolve, because we have this ecosystem of different industries and different inputs, which allow us to evolve a more solid product to prevent different types of fraud in different industries, which might even be helpful for different industries as well. So that's the ever-evolving aspect of it. Going through some questions have been already answered live in the meantime. Let's see here. We can go here. Mandy. Does the tool also check for language errors and then from different languages? Does the tool also check for different versions of passports in different countries? So also compare the documents received in the past with newly received documents. So I guess that's 3 questions in one. I'll break it down. Does the tool also check for language errors and then from different languages? So our solution is agnostic to any kind of language in the Latin script. So yes, we can extract different languages for sure. And then we could, it's currently not on the horizon, let's say, but we can check for language errors. However, since we also employ, of course, OCR, and there's like a risk that that might flag false positives, we could employ it. However, especially maybe for, I think RJ mentioned it during the presentation for receipts and these kind of things, we saw that in the past, these documents have been highlighted by spelling errors as well in the receipts, for example. But it's not necessarily a cause for concern. Of course, if there is a certain use case that you might have, I'm more than happy to learn about it. Does the tool also check for different versions of passports from different countries? We do have identity verification solutions as well. However, we basically classify primarily on what type of document it is, so ID or passport or driver license, and then from which country, but it doesn't have like a version, let's say, of that passport. Does the tool also compare the documents received in the past with newly received documents? I guess this goes more like into the details of like data storage, data processing, etc. Which I'm not sure if we want to open that Pandora box, but long story short, we don't store any data. So if you want to compare it, you can probably like refer back to more like the reports that we can provide to then use that to get a holistic overview of all the types of fraud that you have received. Hope that answers that question as well. We can then proceed here. I think Sido, not sure if I pronounced that correctly. Sido, what does the competitive landscape look like? How unique is Klippa? Yeah, good question always, right? I think we are very unique in the respect that we actually adjust our solutions and we don't boast ourselves in like a we have like that one way to spot fraud approach, but we actually provide different layers. I keep highlighting this, but I think that's really our USP, is in the fact that we are agile in spotting different types of fraud in different industries, because we have that long-lasting history in different industries such as financial services, KYC, and now even more medical or logistics industry, which provides us with unique insights, and therefore our product also evolves with that over time. Lucas, that's already answered. I see. Thanks, Bjorn. So there was another question right below. Do you license sell the software to end users or also BPOs? Yeah, both is possible, of course. So it is, at the end of the day, SaaS solution, which comes in our Docker Horizon platform. And that's, of course, possible. So you can also have a meeting with our experts to dive deeper into that topic. Chad, can Klippa insert itself early within the submission process, i.e. real-time loan submissions, in other words? Can it monitor activity using behavioral signals like typing, speed, field? Okay. Yes, is the answer. So the idea behind our solution is, of course, that it happens in real time. So, for example, submitting a bank statement, I can imagine is a big thing, or salary slips, to validate whether or not those have been tampered with, and then we can indeed signify or raise flags for those purposes to give you an indication. Hey, this document might be tampered with. This is risky. maybe validate it manually. If there is no cause for concern based on our analysis, you can also automate it and then just proceed with the process in an automated fashion. Of course, that also raises then, greater user experience, in my opinion. I just keep scrolling downwards. I see Lee has a very in-depth question as well, so that's it's a nice one. Do you also have lookup capabilities for fraud detection? Is it a real person searching social media, Interpol database check, company house lookup, valid companies that are actively trading? I would answer with a yes and no. So there is, of course, like for example, the social media aspect or Interpol database is not something that we currently have employed. Like nobody has no access for that right now. Of course, interesting approaches, and like I said, we're always open to different approaches to solidify our product. Company house lookups, or what we have, of course, is also like the database check for different European company houses, where you can do, for example, VAT lookups to verify if this is actually a registered company or COC numbers in certain countries. So that's something that we can provide, and we could string together in the Docker Horizon platform through the different services that we employ. Sido came up with another question. The example of driver licenses showed checking on different fields. You have to teach yourself to be able to do this. Not sure if I interpreted it correctly, but I guess what you're hinting at is whether or not these fields are ready by default, so out of the box. So we already have a out of the box solution for the data extraction of any kind of identity documents, so passports, driver licenses, and IDs. Of course, maybe if you have like a country that is maybe not in our client portfolio, then we would have to add that. But we already cover for passports the whole world. For European, so EU IDs and driver licenses also supported. US driver licenses also supported. So we have already a broad range. Of course, again, probably like if it's more in depth and more detailed in a niche case, then it's best to discuss it with one of our experts to see what we can be done. But by default, we can already extract all of the fields that Stanley showed in the demo earlier as well. And this can be trained as well. Nard had a question regarding a learning feedback loop to better estimate risks based on the experience in previous cases. Would seem to me like a great opportunity to minimize efforts on detection. Yeah, very good point. So that's also something that we do employ. So we do already have like a so-called feedback API, which allows the user basically to, in the human in the loop, for example, to edit, to say, okay, this is not fraudulent versus yes, this is fraudulent. So this feedback not only enters your database thereafter or proceeds with the process, but it can also be used to train the model, of course. And this primarily works, of course, with data-based extraction, such as like numbers or strings, let's say, so words, which can be used for training, but for like visual components, probably harder to do because there is then we would require a different model in the background. But overall, possible to do a feedback loop training as well. Yeah. So it's also again something that we can dive deeper into with one of our experts. I think Bjorn is keeping he's keep answering and just keep skipping through. Trudeau, are you able to compare similar images, for example, photos taken in different angles? Yeah, indeed. So here what we do is we don't necessarily compare the images actually, but we actually look more at the content because that's really what Klippa is known for, is for the data extraction side of things, right? So what we can provide is we will always generate a hash key, which is unique to the contents of the image. So for us, it doesn't matter necessarily if the image is taken from a left angle or from a right angle, as long as the content remains the same, we can verify and also then flag those instances by using hash keys, which are based on the content rather than the image layout. There's a common use case specifically in cashback campaigns where users submit the same receipt over and over again to receive over and over again the same cashback points. And in order to counter that, we've employed this solution. I'm just gonna go further down. I think we got like 5 minutes left. I see RJ's coming back as well. How about, I think Leah had another question. How about background of image detection, looking at landmarks or shadows in the background to detect places and times? Yeah, I think that also maybe looks more, then we have to start investigating more time in the geolocation aspect and the metadata as well. So enhancing that part to then compare also like what is detected. So more like on a visual level rather than on a content base. So we already have like vision detection models as well, which could be utilized, for example, in those instances, and then cross-check those with the geolocations is certainly something that is possible in the near future. I think that covers most of the
Yeah, I think
questions.
I'll take over the last one, Nick. So David Hendricks, sorry, I already posted yours as being answered, but we didn't answer it yet. It's about false positives. I think that's a common scenario where if your clients are sending in documents that have been already tampered, for example, to blur out certain information or to hide faces, yeah, then you'll have a lot of false positives with the default settings. But everything is quite configurable, so we can make sure that these kind of triggers won't go off. And this is the thing that we have to work together on to make it perfect. All these answers, we'll try to make it detailed and also written, so we have it in the follow-up message. Any more detailed follow-up questions, also happy to talk to you. So as it's still on the screen, we'd love to have a meeting with you. If you're a client or a partner, you know who your customer success manager is or partner success manager is. If you're new to Klippa, yeah, there's plenty of ways to get in touch with us on the website. We'll maybe also reach out to you proactively. And yeah, very curious to hear your thoughts and your feedback on the webinar. We're going to wrap up here. So thanks everybody for attending, and hope you found it interesting, and wish you a very pleasant afternoon. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.